Phone stick up. Alright then. So good day. We are going on to the next section of narrative writing. This section is going to do plot structure. So we already learned about the plot structure, the different elements of the plot structure. We learned the exposition. The exposition which focuses on developing the characters, the setting, the atmosphere, the mood, everything that is in the beginning that will help our reader to understand where we are heading. Any background information about the character, the setting, etc. is done in the exposition. We understand the rising action. The rising action is what drives the story. It drives the plot. And we understand that that is done in a juxtaposed manner where good versus evil or good and bad is continuously alternated. We learned about the crisis. The crisis will be based on the conflict, whether that conflict is man versus man versus nature, or man versus self. The character will have their own particular crisis that they must overcome. And the moment where they are at their lowest point to overcome this crisis, that will be the climax, where we will see the growth in the character where they overcome whatever is the main issue that they're facing. After that, we have the falling action, where we see how their new developed growth and their new sense of self will inform their decisions and what they do after. We call that the falling action, which will sort of like mirror the rising action. So if they made mistakes in the rising action, the falling action is where they will make up for these mistakes. And then we have our resolution, which we said is our solution to life. This is where the musings of the character will show the moral of the story, the lesson that the author wants us to learn. We also said in the previous class that as the author of the story, you do not start at the beginning and walk to the end. Because if you start at the beginning, you don't know how the end will be. And then when you do that, you create sort of ambiguities and confusion as you go along. So as the author, we always start at the end. We know what we want our readers to learn. We know what we want our readers to take away from the trials. So we formulate the trials even before we formulate the characters. So now that you understand that, before we begin even writing the story, you need to understand tropes of plot. So there are different types of tropes in literature. You can have tropes in characters, you can have tropes in plot. A trope is a specific pattern, a repetitive pattern that comes with the narrative. So if you are to sit down and choose a movie, you're going through a movie list, or you're going through a book list, you want to read a book or a story, you already know what you like to watch. You already know what is the setting and the pattern and the problems and this type of story that you want to watch. Even if you may not have a name for that, you know what you enjoy watching. You know what makes you feel good when you are engaged in these fictitious stories, these fake stories. You know what you want to entertain. For me, I don't entertain horror at all. Horror not gonna make me feel good. I'm not gonna want to see any horror. I like my comedies, and sometimes I will entertain a mystery depending on what the mystery is about. But you will learn what these things mean. So these things are different subgenres or modes. We call them modes of literature. Or just use the word trope, because they are repetitive patterns that we follow because they tell a specific storyline. So now you're going to learn what these different tropes are in plot structure. When we're finished doing this, you will learn tropes of characters. So you will know who is the hero, who's the bad man, who's the mommy, who's the caring friend. All of those different characters are tropes. Sometimes we may say stereotype. Like, you know, I hate to see those stereotypes like those loud, blackguarded, uneducated, sort of flamboyant, sort of homosexual black men. You understand? They always show you these black men being, you know, extra. I know a lot of black men and very few of them behave like that. Right? Even homosexual ones don't behave like that all the time. But that is the stereotype that is usually put across. So sometimes tropes can be good because they can represent like the powerful single woman who can get it done, or the independent single mother who sacrifices for her family and her children come out good despite not having a help or support or a father figure. I like to see those. But some of the present, they don't always paint characters in a positive way. But again, when you learn about these tropes, you will know what you want to present in society. You will know what is the characters that you want to praise or you want to expose. But for today, our objective are to identify plot tropes. So based on the different plots, you will know exactly what type of story you will write. Dependent on the stimulus that you are given, you will create a story based on what you like. You know their components, as in you know what makes them these tropes. So when you see these components, you can say, oh, this is a so-and-so, this is a so-and-so. And understanding necessary techniques. Right? So with each trope, to create each plot structure, you're going to have to create certain things. You're going to have to use certain techniques. The first one that we're going to look at is very popular. It is one of the most exciting plot tropes, and it is action and adventure. So if you go in the library section and you're looking for fiction and they have action and adventure, these are some of the things. Now, action and adventure could be in a mystery or it could be in a thriller, but action and adventure could also just be action and adventure. So in mysteries and thrillers, you may find similar patterns, but action and adventure is by itself, and we all know action and adventure. In the action and adventure plot trope, there's always going to be some larger than life task. There's a hidden treasure. There is some problem that needs to be a major problem, a puzzle, some sort of enigma that needs to be uncovered. Enigma is like a very complex puzzle. Ancient secrets, hidden locations, right? Undiscovered locations. You'd usually find them like Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider. All of these are action and adventure tropes. You have exotic location, undiscovered locations. Now you have high action heroes. What does it mean to have a high action hero? The action hero is skilled in physical training, combat, they're sharpshooters, they have high intellect, they can solve puzzles, they know all of these ancient histories, they can read maps, they can do all of the action and adventure. So they're larger than life heroes. And then you will have obviously the supervillain. The supervillain who is obviously trying to solve the puzzle first or get to the location before the hero. Excuse me. Right? And the supervillain will have similar skills, but they will always be lacking something. Right? So either they lack, some of them are not very clandestine, they're not very, some of them like to be very candid with their villainy. They like to let everybody know they're criminals. Everybody always know that is the criminal man. He walk in the bar and everybody know he's the criminal man. I mean, if you're going to do crime, the least thing you do is move in secret, but no.
Some people like to be shown.
Right, so the supervillains are always those egotistical sorts of criminals where they want everybody to see them, know them. So their plans are never secret. Right? There's always going to be some love interest because obviously these superheroes and these supervillains are ladies' men. Right? The girls are going to love them. And the girls are always going to be used to bring some special information to them. They're always going to get this intel from this forbidden love. Maybe it's an old agent that they used to work with. It always have this, seductive sort of alluring because obviously this villain has to be well-liked and eligible bachelor, but he's not in commitment because his life is so dangerous. Okay, and there's always a MacGuffin. Now a MacGuffin is what we call a special item. Like how in Little Mermaid there was a thingamajig, the fork was a thingamajig. Well, there's always a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin is like a special map or a special amulet or a special sword or something special that once you possess that, you're going to have all the high stakes. So with action and adventure, you can already tell your character has to be very magnanimous. He has to be out there. He he has to have lots of skills, lots of accolades, you know, so your character development has to be grandiose. When you're looking at your action and adventure setting, it can be down the road by a shop or something. It has to be an exotic location, somewhere special, somewhere untapped and undiscovered, right? Or some exotic place like Russia where you could shoot out and police not gonna come and do anything. Or you could jump off a building and just sling down inside another building with a special rope, or your helicopter can come and pick you. That can't happen right here in St. Vincent. Unless it's somewhere down in Grenadines. You have to create that sort of setting. So that would be for action and adventure, and obviously the resolution for action and adventure would always be high stakes. There is no ethical sort of teaching when it comes to action and adventure, because the purpose of the action and adventure is to thrill the reader, to give that reader the escape from the ordinary life that they're living, right? And I would compare action and adventure to contemporary drama. Contemporary drama is the exact opposite of action and drama. It is based in a modern day setting, very localized, very simplistic setting, real life, real day setting, right? And the problems that they face is not high action problems. The problems are real life drama, family problems, relationship problems, gender issues, work issues when it comes to equality, or finding your sexuality, dealing with abuse either from a partner or a parent. There's always going to be some sort of coming of age. We call it a Bildungsroman. It's a coming of age where this person who has this innocent mindset is going to be faced with some tragedy that is going to change their innocence. So maybe a betrayal from a friend, maybe a friend took away a boyfriend or something. The drama in contemporary drama is very day-to-day. And there are no otherworldly elements. If there is a shootout, it has to be a very realistic shootout where police is involved, somebody goes to prison, the children have to go visit the father in prison, and that is causing emotional stress on the mother and the children. It's going to be very, very real life. So if you look at the setting for contemporary drama, real life, just here, could be right here in the classroom, anything simple like that. The characters are going to be very complex because they're going to be dealing with a lot of problems all at once, and they're not going to be making good decisions as they go along. Right? It's a learning process for the characters as we go along. Whereas the action hero man, he's the professional. You understand? He knows how to do everything. Right? And it's always going to be it's always going to be very high emotion. Very high emotion. Whereas in the action and adventure is very high thrill, right? High emotion in the sense of excitement. In the contemporary drama it's always going to be high emotion, sadness, loss, right? Feeling of loneliness, lack of support. It's always going to be those sort of emotionally depressive sort of moods. And then as we go through the depression of the character, they learn how to cope, and they learn how to overcome, or they just learn how to navigate life as it is. Right? But there is nothing much to it. So some people like these contemporary dramas, those who watch a lot of Tyler Perry movies, those who watch a lot of Lifetime movies, or those who read a lot of like Daniel Steele romance books and so, they tend to have a lot of those. I know Push is a very good contemporary drama. It is actually based on a true story. That's where they get movie Precious from. Push, the Down syndrome girl who was a child of her father. You know, she made a child from her father. Her mother was a drug addict. And those contemporary dramas, they usually are focused with minorities. You usually find minorities. You're not gonna find rich white girls and so in these sort of contemporary drama. It's it's always with minorities and so on. Whereas with the action hero, he's gonna be some rich man who have condos every state and all of that. Mansion here and there. Some butler who is very good at creating and engineering special equipment so that he can fight all of these battles, and so you usually find the difference. So compare action and adventure plot tropes to contemporary drama tropes. Which one you like? Some people will like the shootouts and all of that, but some people will just like looking at life and mirroring life. I'm going to look at children's fables and folklore. So children's fables and folklore is exactly what it is. It's for children. It is very light entertainment and it's very moralistic. When I say very moralistic, we're only focusing on those good morals. So in the setting for children's stories, you may have talking animals. And the reason why we tend to have talking animals or talking creatures or mythical creatures instead of children is that children have a very imaginative mind. And with that imaginative mind, they also have a very structured mind. So if you show a little Chinese child, that child is not going to see themselves in that Chinese child because it's like, that's a boy, that's my friend, right? So like, for example, my son will watch Ryan. He knows that's Ryan. That's Ryan, my friend. He will not put himself in Ryan's shoes. But then when he watch Baby Bus and he sees the little panda on the bus or a little sheep on the bus, and so he's like, look, that's me. You understand?
Yeah,
he
can say, look me there.
Yes, they can identify with animals and these otherworldly creatures more than they identify with the actual character. So in the children's fables and folklore, you usually have talking animals, and each animal is different. So each animal will represent some sort of different personality in children, and we always include, I don't want to say crippled, but let me say maimed animals or atypical animals. Animals who probably have slower speech, animals who probably cannot read, animals who probably don't know how to tie their shoelaces and so on. They're always faced with a challenge that most children are faced with, and that is done so that children are different stages of development, because children have asynchronous development. One could be very, very smart, read and write, but don't know the difference between under and over. You understand? They could tell you about dinosaurs, but if you ask them which is under or over, they mix them up. Or they put L backwards and so on. So when you present these differences in the animals and you show acceptance, they're always accepted in the group. It helps the children to accept their own differences. I like that movie Utopia with the little rabbit, and rabbits never were police. Only lions and those bigger beasts were police, but then the rabbit was able to become a police. Right, so in these children's stories, they always show friendship, community, accepting difference, and the problem is usually like learning a new skill or overcoming some doubt, self-doubt, or overcoming some adversity within the group. Maybe they have to plan a party for a friend or something. The crises in the children's stories are very light-hearted and very, very much steeped in the community of the friendships. They always work, teamwork is a major theme when it comes to children's stories. They are very imaginative. So yes, it is expected that a sheep can go to a store and buy fireworks while a pig is at home baking cake for the friend. But they make a mess in the mother kitchen and they all have to work together to clean up the mess. You understand? Right, so it's very simple, but yet very imaginative, very colorful. I would compare children's fables and folklore to fantasy now. Fantasy would be like children's stories for adults. Right? So instead of having talking animals, you have regular people but with magical and mythical powers. So you may have a centaur, which is a half horse, half man. Or you have a warlock and a witch. Or you have some sort of creature you know, these magical creatures.
Vampires.
Yeah, vampires and all these things. So they are humans, but they are outer worldly humans. Now, because they are outer worldly, the setting is usually some sort of medieval setting, very dark, a time when people are very believing of magic and outer worldly supernatural powers. Supernatural powers is a major theme in fantasy. That magical realism we say. Magical realism. Right? As if magic is really real, and you will always find, but remember, Obeah and magic is the same thing, right? In those countries where they look at vampires, and so we have Sukunya here, that's a vampire to the south, not the same way, right? In those countries we have werewolves, we have Lagaru here, they turn into Lagaru and drink sheep blood and goat blood, same way. In St. Lucia they call them Lugaru, because in Europe they call them lycanthrope, or lycans. Same creatures, just different name. Yeah. So if you think of magic, think of Obeah. Think of Disney stories are always filled with magic and Obeah fantasy. Yes.
Imaginary.
Now you will always have a chosen one. So there will always be some minority character who is not really a minority character but actually chosen. That there is a prophecy or there is some tale that is told of this person. And they will always not want it. They will always not want the power. They will always not want the leadership. They will always not want to be chosen. And that's because the evil, the nemesis, the rival to the good, because he's good. God don't want to rule over people. Evil want to rule over people. The evil one would be the power hungry one. Right? But even though you have this power hungry, vengeful one, like in Harry Potter, there was the guy whose name should not be mentioned. Right. And Harry just there, listen, I just want to learn how to do this witch thing and do my own business. I just want to graduate school. Right? But you have the chosen one who has the prophecy. Who doesn't want it. But then, here is the wise and patient mentor who is always there to guide them. And with the wise and patient mentor, you will have unlikely allies. So they always have somebody. So Harry wasn't good at spells, but Hermione was good at spells. Harry was very introverted, he wasn't very adventurous, but Ron is always the one who have an idea. They want to go here, go there, do this and whatever. And then he has all of these wise tutors from the school who is teaching him how to hold these powers because they know he is the chosen one who must fulfill this prophecy. You will always find there's some powerful artifact. Either a rod. Moses had a rod, right? Moses didn't want the power. He was the Hebrew who was not really a Hebrew, who grew up in the Pharaoh palace, and then when he found out, he went away to live. But then they called him back. God said, come, go back. And you understand? And he didn't want to do it. And God said, why? He said, well, I can't speak. He said, well, all right, let me get a brother. He loved talk. So he had an unlikely ally, which is the brother he never grew up with. Right? And the sister he never grew up with. But he had this rod, which is powerful. Right? Where he would get this power from. And then there's always a big rescue or some test where the training that the mentor gave the hero is perfected, right? So after you wax on and wax off and all of that, after you do all of that magic and whatever, you're going to have a big showdown between you, the chosen one, and the nemesis. And in that we will see good versus evil will always triumph, right? So that is fantasy. The last one I want to do before I do romance and which one I did put in? Romance and histories. I didn't put in romance. I need the romance for last because oh my gosh. Everybody loves write romance stories. I know you want to write romance stories. So I will that for that. So romance and histories are the last two and I will show you the comparison between that. Horrors now. Horrors again are like mysteries or thrillers. So a mystery is always some immigration questionable that they have to walk through. Right? So you may walk through maybe who is stealing the neighborhoods. That's a mystery. Versus who killed the neighbor. That's a thriller. Right? Because a crime was done. So when you think like CSI Miami, that's a thriller. When you think of Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, them just going around the village trying to figure out who is the old woman who lived in the house up on the hill. That's a mystery. Right? The discovery not going to change the price of it. They just fast. And in the process of the mystery, all other people business getting revealed. Right? Who have a child with this other person. All those lies come out in a mystery. So in the process of figuring out that one mystery, you get all these other mysteries uncovered. But the thriller, there's a crime. And you have to figure out who is the one who committed the crime. With the horror now, just like action and adventure could be mysteries and thrillers, horrors are also mysteries or thrillers. So you can have a horror where they're trying to figure out what are the strange scratch marks all over the village. Is there some sort of monster that is walking around scratching all the trees? That's a mystery. Or the thriller could be somebody walking around shutting off people's head in the village. Right? So the horror will always have suspense. Or there will be some curse. If you're going to go down the magical road, a curse. There's always going to be a monster, a criminal, a sociopath, psychopath, or an antichrist. Some religious, anti-religious person or anti-religious institution. And it's always going to be good versus evil. It's always going to be an eerie setting, either nighttime or sometime where there's an eclipse or sometime where there is going to be some darkness. Because obviously, evil loves to do the biddings in darkness. So it's always going to have an eerie dark setting. Now with the other mysteries and the other thrillers, it doesn't have to be at night. But if it's a horror, you have to set up this sort of suspense. This sort of fear. A lot of fear is created in horrors. Now it's always going to have the minority characters getting killed first. The weaker one, the woman, the black person, the homosexual.
The coward.
The coward. Right? They're always gonna get whacked first. So the hero now will always be left for last. That's the one that's gonna face the evil. Hard for them, yes. So they're gonna leave that one for last. And in the process of this evil going around doing all of this before they get to the hero will also be walking along with other characters to fight this evil. Whether it is they have to go to priests, they have to go to somebody for holy water and stakes and silver bullet and whatever. So they have all of these different knowledgeable people on how to defeat evil that will come into your storyline. Now there's always going to be karmic retribution or nemesis, where we experience a catharsis. Basically, nemesis means evil lose, and we feel good about evil losing. Catharsis means we feel good when we see evil lose because we experience so much evil and wickedness in our day-to-day life. Sometimes we feel like God has taken long. You understand? Like, God hurry up a little bit, we want to see. We want to see that evil they did. But sometimes in reality we don't get to see that because vengeance is mine, save the Lord. So we just live life and praise God and hope that no evil befall us. But you have the stories where people will say, well, this person walk over and this person, or this person evil, or this murderer get off, or this rapist get off. And so when we experience these horrors and we see evil lose, we feel good because we say, yes, that's how life should be. But as a true horror, there is always going to be a resurrected monster. So the defeated monster always resurrects. Either the obia that was in the socks went into a coin and somebody find the coin, or the murderer was in the van and then while they transported them to the secret prison, somebody van turned over and you see the murderer, or they shoot him and they bury him or whatever, and then you see his hand push up out of the... There's always going to be a resurrected evil after we experience our karmic retribution for the horror. And I don't know why, but again, horrors do a lot of fear mongering. It is to bring on fear in you, right? And at the end of the story, even though we realize good will triumph over evil and blah blah blah, we still have that fear that tomorrow is another day, and evil still roaming. You understand? They say the work of the evil is never done. Right? When good people sit down and say, well, I don't do my good deed for the day that we eat and drink and relax. No, evil people, they do evil this morning, they come home tonight and sit down and eat. What evil are going to do tomorrow? Right? So that idea that evil never ends. So the defeated monster always resurrects at the end of the horror. So looking at romance, Tekla, I know you're gonna write all these notes because this is your genre here now, this is your mode. So with the romance, what do we have? You're always going to have a long-suffering, hopeless romantic. So we have a long-suffering, hopeless romantic. And when I say long-suffering, hopeless romantic, that's because the love interest is often damaged goods. Because, regardless of how we want to say it, struggle love sells. Struggle love sells. Because what you don't know is that romance is usually sold to women, Men don't read romance books, and they don't watch romance stories. You know why? Men are not long suffering.
No.
When you see woman stress, man, get rid of that. Plenty woman about. It's true. You understand? As a matter of fact, I had 2 and 3 more.
Yeah,
right? So romance is usually sold to women, and that is why the main character in romance stories are usually a long-suffering, hopeless romantic who is desperately in love with a tainted lover. Tainted or jaded lover. It's either he's afraid of commitment issues because he was hurt in the past, or he worked too much and he wants too much money and he don't have time for romance or so. Or he's this big shot boss and he don't know how to be sensitive and he don't know how to treat women. Right? So it's always desperately in love with a tainted or jaded lover. There will usually be lots of trials. Trials of affection. What does trials of affection mean? There's always going to be tests. He's going to love her, love bomb her. I love her so much, send roses and cards, and then she won't hear from him. Or they'll set a date, and then something will come up with work, and he will choose to go to the work meeting as opposed to the date, and she'll have to cry, and then he'll have to come and make amends. And you will see gradual improvement where the beauty transforms the beast. Okay? So with every trial that they overcome, where he does not evoke the affection towards love, whether that affection is sensitivity, compassion, even respect to call her and say, I can't make it to the date. I'll send a taxi to carry you home or whatever. She'll be there at the restaurant sitting alone. People come embarrassed and say, hey, they're not coming. You understand? And she have to endure because again, she's long suffering. She's a hopeless romantic. She believes that, my love is so strong that it will transform this beast, right? So with every trial of affection that is overcome, we see the beast eventually sheds his layers, he eventually transforms, he softens, he starts to consider her more, right? You also have those romantic stories where the man may be promiscuous. So he may have many different, yes.
And this man, shall have a perfection.
Right. Oh, yes. So she have about 5 or 6 different guys.
Yeah.
One for shoes, one for this, one for that. And he's their good guy. Maybe he's a construction worker. You know, just not what she's used to. And he's there. And when these other deadbeat guys don't take her seriously, as in she doesn't get that affection, he's there to support her, whatever. But then what happened? She goes back with them. And then he has to deal with that affection. Right? So it's always the beauty that transforms the beast. And as they go through each trial, we see the affections, positive affections of love. Right? So we get to see positive versus negative affections. So romance stories are really just to show how love is a balance, where through somebody who has that love to give is able to transform or convert somebody who doesn't know what love is. And love is a choice, right? Love is a choice where we choose to show compassion, we choose to show sensitivity, we choose to show forgiveness, we choose to show understanding, we choose to prioritize the affection of another person. We choose these things. And it is the choices that are being compared in a romance, where the person who is naturally loving and affectionate can do these things like nothing. Right? But the person who is now learning will then be changed or transformed through seeing these choices that this person makes. And then their choices eventually come. Now, in the process of the transformation, there's going to be a time when the hopeless romantic is going to give up hope. Right? So, give up hope in love. Now, this is where the characters in these romance stories usually come in. Now, usually, the character does not give up hope because they're afforded something special. So these characters are usually either very rich, very wealthy, or very attractive. And that's what kind of keeps the person coming up. Is either he buys the lady fancy gift, or the man is very affectionate and very handsome. Right? He has all the right qualities that she wants in these guys, but he may not be as wealthy. Whereas the woman, he doesn't have any of the qualities, but he has all of the material things that she wants, the lifestyle. So there's always going to be that one positive trope, or that seductive trope in the character that keeps the love interest there. Either money or all the qualities that are good for love. With the women, it's usually the money. Money usually keeps the women. Right? And on the other hand, it would be the men. When you look at Titanic, the woman was wealthy, and Jack was a poor boy, right? Alright, yes, he was good. But when you look at like 50 Shades of Grey and so, the man was very wealthy. You understand? So there's always going to be that seductive. The book is worse. Listen, I tried to read that book. I read about chapter 3. I didn't like the character. I thought that the character was too unrealistic. I said, no woman in the right mind. This girl was a university graduate, you know. And she was allowing this man to have her day here and everywhere. I'm like, this don't seem like an educated in it. Yeah. She seemed like she like the freaky stuff. Yeah, but I mean, that's she went through a lot of trauma with that guy, you know. A lot of trauma. And she have education. I know she's gonna go and look for work somewhere and, you know, write the article on him and whatever. But you know, she want helicopter ride and all of that. Licks indeed. And you know, if it was a broke man who doing that, you know, they'd have all abuse. You beat up the woman. If it was a broke man, if he didn't have money, that would have been abuse. Alright, okay. romantic, and in the end, as you know, the lovers reconcile. But the thing with the romance is that you never really know. So romance stories are usually open-ended stories. So open-ended versus closed-ended. So an open-ended story, well, let me start with closed-ended. Closed-ended story means that we know exactly what happened. In the action and adventure, we know who got the treasure. Right? It's not the villain who got it, it's the hero who got it, he secured it. The virus was never released, the antidote is safely locked away by the authorities. We know exactly what happened. In open-ended stories, we never really know. Because the character would have shown a history of poor choices when it comes to affection. His grand gesture of marrying her. You know, like, oh, I'm going to propose to you, I'm going to get married. But you know, that marriage is not going to have problems down the line. Right? So we just go with faith that it will have a happy ending. But there is no definitive ending as in they live happily ever after. That is a fantasy ending. So I like to think that romance stories are more in the contemporary drama than it is in the fantasy. Because we don't like too much of a love story that is too perfect. We like to see struggle love. Ladies love struggle love. If it don't have struggle in love, it ain't for me. We love the drama. So, I should come take my car I'm sorry that I really can't. So, it's never close-ended. We never really know whether this man is going to be a good man or not. And we never know if this girl is going to settle down with this man or she's going to go back to her streets ways as soon as the man cannot buy her an expensive dress or she realizes that it's this jalopy car they're going to have to drive for the rest. You understand? So the struggle love does not present a closed ending. We never really know if that love is truly transformed. And the last genre, I would have really liked Josiah to be here because I think this would be his genre. Historical fiction. Historical fiction seems to be very much into the political spin, racism and all of that. So historical fiction would be right up Josiah's lane. Historical fiction usually takes an actual historical event and then add fictitious elements to it. So I can take independence in St. Vincent, 1979, suffrage blow in April and we're going for independence in October. I am a politician campaigning. I am Ebenezer, Theodore Joshua. Or I am the campaign manager for Ebenezer, Theodore Joshua. And I face with all of these white people coming to tell me what to do. Right? And I have to stand up for my Vincentian nationals and let them know we're not backing down. Suffrage no suffrage, we say independence, they say, oh, they promised it since 1975, we want it now, today. And they're in meeting, and they're heated meetings. Kind of like action and adventure. It's kind of action and adventure because it's a knowledgeable character who has all the skills necessary to get the job done. But the difference is, it is set in a real life setting, in an actual historical moment, but we embellish the events so that our character is presented. So an example of historical fiction would be The Wine of Astonishment. So The Wine of Astonishment was set in Trinidad when they banned the spiritual Baptists from performing. You know there was a ban on spiritual Baptists? Well, that is why we have spiritual Baptist Day in St. Vincent, because that was part of the prohibition, religious prohibition. You were not allowed to worship in any African religion. It was against the law. And the Wine of Astonishment is about these spiritual Baptists who would have to go in the bushes in Trinidad to worship and so on. The authorities, even though they're white people who have the government at hand, they hire these village personnel, like these MPs, who go around in the village They own people, and snitch. So if I know you're spiritual, but check out what's going on or whatever, just checking in on my good constituent members, how is everything, you need any help here, you need any help? Why you have them flag up there? What them flag mean? That if the authorities come and see with those flags, you better take them down. 2-3 weeks he pass and he don't see them take down, he go to the authorities and say, no, he's a spiritual Baptist techno. And police come and raid your house and lock you up and drag you and your children and your family and they try you and you get how much ever years in jail for worshiping as a spiritual Baptist. So that is why we have spiritual Baptist Day in St. because it is part of celebrating that time when the law against African religions were abolished and we were free to worship as spiritual Baptists because it was either Methodist or Catholic or Anglican. So the Wine of Astonishment is about a small village. It's not real, but it is set in a real type setting, as if it were a real village at that particular time in history. You would usually find historical fiction would have a lot of information, factual information at that about what happened at the time. Maybe a speech that was given by the Prime Minister at the time would be mentioned. Maybe there will be a specific person, maybe, we heard Marcus Garvey on the radio. These are real people who are happening at specific time. With Chazaya, who's talking about racism and so on. To Kill a Mockingbird is another one of those historical fiction where at the time, racism and these sort of trials against black people who are clearly innocent, but they needed a large prison population to do work like slaves. So they just went around accusing black people of crime so that they could put them in jail so that they can work for free as prisoners. And that story has a lot of reference to different people who were in the legal system at the time, different laws that were existing at the time. And even though the story itself is fake, the realities, when I say the realities, as in the themes that are mentioned, whether it is bigotry, racism, nepotism, prejudice, whatever, all of those were very real occurrences at the time. Right? So you can do one, maybe 2020 election, or 2020 election, when Labour force was in power, and there was that big blockade of the road and everything. You could be, as a child who was witnessing the blockade and all of that, you can write a story. 9/11. Where were you when 9/11 happened? You can write a story about what you experienced at the time when you heard about 9/11. Oh Lord, listen. You write the story, but this historical fiction will usually be set in the time frame when the histories happen, and it would usually have a lot of factual elements about the story. So when you watch those movies about like Pearl Harbor and Vietnam War, or you watch stories about World War I, World War II, you watch stories about even The Crown. The Crown is a big series now with Queen Elizabeth. Yeah. Lots of factual things that actually happened that was in the news, but then these stories are embellished where you get to see the personal life and so on. So historical fiction is very informative. You have to be very informed about what happened at that time, what was the mentality of people at that time, what were some of the events that occurred, who are some of the prolific people who were involved in the movement at the time, and then you just put yourself as a character experiencing that time, and then you see. You can write a lot of nice historical fiction because it doesn't have to be histories like 1960 something, A historical fiction could be anything historic that happened here in St. Vincent. Right? So a historical fiction could be 2013 floods. Yeah. You understand where you at the time? I know. Argyle International Airport, right? So because you all are a mature audience and you have a lot of old-time knowledge, 9/11, the whole change of government, the education revolution, all of those things are historical. embellish and create your own narratives. So historical fiction would be a lot like contemporary drama, but it will be more factual. So whereas contemporary drama just have make-up family lives and make-up stories, in the historical fiction we must have some historical facts embedded in the story as well. So these are the plot tropes. So based on your like, whichever story you would like, you can take any stimuli and create any one of these plots. You don't have to learn them all. If you learn about two, the same way I juxtapose them to show which two are similar, like the action and adventure versus the fantasy, but then contemporary drama versus historical fiction, or mysteries and thrillers versus horrors, or children's fables versus fantasies, or historical fiction versus contemporary drama. You look at them and you see what your mind is better at. Some people's mind are very imaginative. They can come up with talking animals. They can come up with this unrealistic world that is so amazing that you wish that it existed in reality. And some people's imagination are very matter of fact. Right? I can't see myself coming up with fantasy and so on. I don't have it in me. I don't care for it much because my mind is so based on reality that a contemporary drama or historical fiction would be more my speed. I can't see action and adventure either. Right? Because what am I going to do? Who helicopter? Who superhero? What? You understand? What position is my, what spy? I don't know anything about spies, and I don't care to know anything about spies. So that may not be my best genre. Right? Romance, I can't see myself doing romance either because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to encourage no long-suffering love. Because my character will beat the man and run him. It's not going to be very romantic.
You're going to end a sad soul. No romance not again.
You understand? When he more than anything else, it might be institutionalized. So, choose the plot structure that works for you. And then as we go along, we will learn how to create characters who match the tropes of the different plot structures that we learn. Okay, so thank you very much for coming. And I'm going to stop the live.